A family moves to Florida, buys a house, and 6 months later gets an insurance renewal for $9,400 a year. Another family buys in a subdivision built on limestone so thin the ground has collapsed more than 6,000 times in a single county. A third family purchases a condo in 2023 and gets hit with a $200,000 special assessment. The listing never went mentioned. Florida is not one place. It is dozens of different markets with completely different risks. And every one of them can be measured against 3 tests. First, can you actually insure the property at a number that does not wreck your monthly budget? Second, is inventory stable, or is it building up because buyers are already walking away? Third, are people still choosing to arrive, or are the net migration numbers starting to move the other direction? A city that passes all 3 tests is a foundation. A city that fails them is a trap that does not reveal itself until after closing. We looked at 10 Florida markets. 6 are cities where the insurance numbers, the geology, and the disaster history say you will regret the move. And 4 are cities where all 3 tests come back clean. First up on the regret side, Kissimmee, the tourist corridor town that charges you to live next to a theme park and gives you almost nothing in return. Kissimmee sits in Osceola County along the Interstate 4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando. The proximity to Walt Disney World is the entire sales pitch. Newcomers see homes in the $250,000 to $320,000 range and assume they are getting a deal. They are not. What the listing does not show you is the Community Development District fee. Osceola County has more active CDDs than almost any county in the state. These are separate taxing districts layered on top of your property taxes and your HOA. A typical CDD assessment runs $2,000 to $4,000 per year, and unlike an HOA fee, you cannot vote it down. It is a lien on the property. According to Zillow, median values have dropped roughly 3% year over year as buyers figure this out. Add above-average property crime, traffic that turns 10 miles into 45 minutes during tourist season, and the fact that Central Florida sits in the state's sinkhole and flood zone. You are paying for proximity to a vacation, not for a place to build a life. And at least in Kissimmee, the ground under your house stays put. The next city cannot say that. Next, Ocala, the fastest-growing metro in Florida that is building faster than the ground can support. Hala, in Marion County, has been the headline migration story for 3 years. Affordable homes, horse country charm, cost of living roughly 15% below the state average. It sounds ideal, but Marion County sits directly inside Florida's sinkhole corridor. The Florida Geological Survey maps dense clusters of subsidence incidents across the county, with shallow limestone and natural groundwater movement creating ongoing risk. In 2019, a sinkhole opened beneath a residential property on Southwest 62nd Street in Ocala without warning, swallowing a section of the yard and damaging the foundation before the owners knew anything had shifted. The family filed a claim. Their standard homeowner's policy denied it. Sinkhole damage is not covered unless you purchase a separate endorsement, one that most buyers never learn about until after closing. That story is not unusual in Marion County. Sinkhole claims here are among the highest per capita in the state, and the endorsement, when carriers will even write it, adds meaningfully to your annual premium. On top of the geology, Ocala's infrastructure has not kept pace with its growth. Roads built for a small agricultural county now carry traffic from a metro that added tens of thousands of residents in under 5 years. According to Redfin, inventory has climbed sharply, with homes sitting on the market significantly longer than a year ago. The boom brought builders. The infrastructure and the ground underneath did not follow, and Ocala is just in the corridor. The next city holds the national record. Third, Spring Hill, the community that holds the title of sinkhole capital of the entire United States. Spring Hill in Hernando County is an unincorporated community of over 120,000 people on Florida's west central Gulf Coast, about an hour north of Tampa. Median home values sit around $240,000, well below the statewide number. And that price is low for a reason the listing will never mention. According to Hernando County records and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Spring Hill ranks #1 in the nation for verified sinkholes. Approximately 1/4 of all sinkholes in Florida occur in Hernando County alone. Between 2000 and 2013, The county property appraiser's office logged over 6,000 sinkhole incidents. Heavy rains and the region's thin limestone layer create conditions where the ground can open without warning. In 2014, one Spring Hill sinkhole measured 30 feet deep and 105 feet wide, forcing 4 homes to evacuate within 48 hours. The entire area sits in Sinkhole Alley, a corridor running through Hernando, Pasco, and Hillsborough counties that accounts for 66% of all sinkhole insurance claims in the state. And standard homeowners insurance does not automatically cover it. You have to request a sinkhole endorsement, and many carriers in this corridor either refuse to write it or price it out of reach. Spring Hill's prices are low because the ground it sits on is not reliable. Spring Hill is the geology problem. The next city is what happens when the infrastructure problem is just as bad. Fourth, Lehigh Acres. The sprawling grid of streets that was never designed to be a real city and still is not one. Lehigh Acres sits in Lee County, east of Fort Myers. Population is over 130,000, but there is no city government, no downtown, no public hospital, and no municipal water or sewer for large portions of the community. The road grid was platted in the 1950s by a developer who sold parcels sight unseen to buyers in the Northeast. Many were in flood zones with no utility access. That original pattern was never corrected. When Hurricane Ian made landfall in Lee County in September 2022 as a Category 4 storm, it caused an estimated $112.9 billion in damage across southwest Florida. Lehigh Acres took significant wind and flood damage in neighborhoods with no storm drainage infrastructure. According to ATM data, Lee County saw one of the highest foreclosure rates among major metros in the quarters following the storm. Insurance carriers pulled out or tripled premiums. A homeowner here can expect $5,000 to over $10,000 a year in property insurance. The median home price hovers around $270,000. But without a city government to maintain roads or manage drainage, every homeowner is on their own. The nearest trauma center is in Fort Myers, a 30 to 45-minute drive from the eastern edge. The price is low. The infrastructure to support it is not there. Lehigh Acres never had a city to lose. The next city on this list had one, and then a Category 5 took it. Fifth, Panama City. The Panhandle city that took a direct hit from a Category 5 hurricane and is still rebuilding 8 years later. In October 2018, Hurricane Michael made landfall near Panama City as a Category 5 storm, the first to hit the Florida Panhandle at that intensity in recorded history. Wind speeds exceeded 160 miles per hour. Damage was estimated at $25.5 billion. Nearby Mexico Beach was essentially flattened. 8 years later, the recovery is still incomplete. Drive through Millville, the working-class neighborhood directly south of downtown, and you will see blue tarps on roof lines, boarded windows, and empty lots where homes used to stand. The Marina District has seen partial commercial recovery, but blocks away from it, the storm damage is still visible on structures that have sat untouched for years. Over $39 million in federal housing recovery funds were allocated for Panama City and Bay County alone, and the rebuilding timeline has stretched years beyond projections. The insurance market never fully returned. Multiple carriers exited Bay County after Michael, and those that remain charge premiums reflecting the demonstrated risk. Florida hurricane insurance now ranges from $5,500 to over $12,000 a year, and coastal Bay County sits at the upper end. Tyndall Air Force Base, one of the county's largest employers, suffered catastrophic damage and is still in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar rebuild. The median home price sits around $270,000. For that number, you are buying into a market that took the worst hurricane hit in modern Florida history and has not fully recovered. The price reflects the risk. The listing does not say it out loud. Panama City is still rebuilding from one catastrophic event. The last regret city is dealing with 3 at the same time. And finally, the 6th regret city, and the one where the most factors broke at the same time, Fort Lauderdale. The South Florida city where the water is rising from below and the costs are falling from above. Fort Lauderdale in Broward County has always been marketed as a more affordable alternative to Miami. But 3 forces converged between 2022 and 2026 that fundamentally changed the math. First, the flooding. In April 2023, Fort Lauderdale received over 25 inches of rain in a single 24-hour period, the heaviest rainfall event in the city's recorded history. Entire neighborhoods went underwater. It hit areas that had never flooded before. Repeated flooding in 2024 and 2025 confirmed the drainage infrastructure cannot handle what climate patterns are now delivering. Second, the condo crisis. After the Surfside building collapse in 2021, Florida passed new structural inspection and reserve funding requirements. The result has been a wave of special assessments hitting condo owners across Broward County. Individual unit owners have received bills ranging from $25,000 to over $200,000 for structural repairs, their buildings deferred for years. Condo values in parts of Broward County have dropped nearly 10% year over year. Third, the insurance. Broward County's combination of hurricane exposure, flood history, and aging buildings has made it one of the most expensive counties in Florida to insure. A homeowner here can expect premiums north of $8,000 a year, with flood insurance adding another $2,000 to $4,000 on top. The median home price is roughly $400,000. At a $400,000 purchase price, your property taxes run roughly $6,000 to $8,000 a year. Add insurance and flood coverage at $12,000. Add even a modest special assessment, averaged over 5 years, and you are at $30,000 annually before a single mortgage payment. Fort Lauderdale is not failing because one thing broke. The water, the buildings, and the insurance all broke at the same time. So if the coast floods, the cheap markets sit on unstable ground, and the insurance is unmanageable, where do you actually go? There are 4 cities where all 3 numbers work. Here is the first one. Trust City number 4, Dunedin, the walkable Gulf Coast town that quietly became one of the most stable small markets in the state. Dunedin sits on the Pinellas County coast, just north of Clearwater, with a population of about 40,000. It has a walkable downtown with locally owned restaurants and shops, a craft brewery district, and direct access to both Honeymoon Island and Caladesi Island, consistently ranked among the best beaches in the country. But the reason it earns a spot on this list is not the charm, it is the stability. Dunedin's housing market has held value more consistently than almost any comparable coastal town in Florida. Prices have not spiked and crashed the way they have in Cape Coral or Fort Lauderdale, because Dunedin never attracted the speculative investor wave. The housing stock is primarily owner-occupied single-family homes, not investor-owned condos. Pinellas County has one of the lowest sinkhole risk profiles on the Gulf Coast side, and the city's position on the bay side of the Barrier Islands provides more natural storm surge protection than open Gulf-facing communities. Insurance premiums here are lower than in Lee or Charlotte County by a significant margin. The median home value sits around $370,000. Compare that directly to Fort Lauderdale at $400,000, where your insurance is double, your flood risk is documented, and your condo could come with an assessment the listing never mentioned. In Dunedin, the price reflects the house, not the risk. Insurance, manageable. Inventory, stable. Net migration, still positive. All 3 tests, passed. Trust City number 3, Gainesville, the university-anchored inland city with a medical center, a stable economy, and almost no hurricane history. Gainesville sits in Alachua County in north-central Florida, roughly 70 miles inland from either coast. The University of Florida and UF Health Shands Hospital are the economic anchors, employing tens of thousands and drawing a constant flow of students, researchers, and medical professionals. University towns do not experience the same boom and bust cycles as tourism or speculation-driven markets. The median home price sits around $280,000. For that price, you get a Level 1 trauma center, a nationally ranked research university, a cost of living below the state average, and a verifiable track record of avoiding major hurricane damage. Gainesville's inland position means it has dodged the direct hits that devastated the coasts. It is not in a sinkhole corridor, not in a storm surge zone, and not dependent on a single industry. The honest downside is that Gainesville is a college town, and the pace reflects that. If you want Gulf beaches, this is not it. But if you want a stable, affordable Florida city where the hospital, the economy, and the ground underneath your house are all reliable, insurance affordable, inventory controlled, migration net positive, Gainesville earns that trust. Trust City number 2, St. Augustine. The oldest city in America, with one of the strongest county economies in Florida. St. Augustine sits in St. Johns County on Florida's northeast coast. Founded in 1565, it is the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the United States. And that history is not just a tourism brochure. Over 6 million visitors a year support a service economy that provides steady employment without the seasonal volatility of a theme park market. The real story is the county. St. Johns County consistently ranks as one of the safest, highest-performing counties in the state. The school district is rated among the best in Florida. The crime rate is well below average, and the housing market has shown more resilience than the overheated Southwest Florida corridor. The median home price sits around $400,000, the same number as Fort Lauderdale. That is the comparison that matters. You can buy into St. Augustine at Fort Lauderdale's price, but your insurance is thousands less per year. There is no condo assessment wave, and the Northeast Coast has historically taken fewer direct hurricane hits than the Gulf side or Broward County. Same price, different math entirely. Insurance premiums in St. Johns County run significantly lower than in Broward or Lee County. There is no special assessment crisis lurking in aging condo towers. All 3 tests clear. The honest assessment is that St. Augustine is not a bargain. But unlike Kissimmee at half the price, every dollar here goes into the city itself, not into a CDD fee you did not know existed. And finally, trust city number 1 on our list, and the strongest overall market we found, Pensacola. The Gulf Coast city with a military-anchored economy, affordable waterfront living, and a genuine downtown most Florida cities lost decades ago. Pensacola sits in Escambia County at the western tip of the Panhandle. Naval Air Station Pensacola, the home of naval aviation and the Blue Angels, is the economic backbone. Military installations do not relocate. They do not get acquired by private equity. They do not file for bankruptcy. That makes Pensacola's primary employer the most stable anchor on this entire list. The median home price sits around $260,000. For that, you are within 20 minutes of Gulf beaches on Pensacola Beach and Perdido Key, in a city with a walkable downtown that has independent restaurants, a thriving arts district, and a waterfront that belongs to the public. Cost of living sits roughly 12% below the national average, and there is no state income tax. The honest take: Pensacola is in the western panhandle, so hurricane risk is real. Ivan hit in 2004. Sally hit in 2020. But unlike Panama City, Pensacola has rebuilt fully after every storm, and the military presence means federal recovery resources arrive faster and at larger scale. Insurance premiums are elevated compared to inland markets, but remain below the worst corridors in Lee, Charlotte, or Broward County. Picture this: you wake up in a paid-off home 15 minutes from the Gulf. Your insurance is manageable, your downtown has a coffee shop that knows your order. The largest employer in town has been operating since 1914 and is not going anywhere. And your monthly carrying cost is less than what a condo owner in Fort Lauderdale pays in assessments alone. Insurance: manageable. Inventory: stable. Net migration: people are still choosing to arrive. That is Pensacola. That is why it sits at the top of this list. If this is the kind of research you do before a big financial decision, subscribe. I cover markets like this every single week. The data behind the listing price, not just the listing price.
5 Florida towns robbing homebuyers blind, and 5 that are actually worth the money.
There is a Florida town where the listing says $375,000, but the actual cost of owning that home is closer to $500,000 when you add up the insurance, the flood premiums, and the property taxes nobody told you about. There is another town sitting directly on top of what geologists call Sinkhole Alley, where the ground beneath your foundation is literally dissolving. And a third where the crime rate is so high that your insurance premium goes up just because of your zip code. But here's the part nobody talks about. For every town quietly draining your wallet, there is another one where cheap actually means cheap. Today, 5 Florida towns robbing homebuyers blind, and 5 that are actually worth every dollar. Stay until the end, because the number 1 worth the money town has a total cost that is going to surprise you. Let's get into it. Number 5. Poinciana. Poinciana sits on the Osceola and Polk County border, about 45 minutes south of Orlando. And on paper, it looks like a deal. Median home price right around $280,000. But here is what the listing does not mention. Poinciana sits in the tornado corridor of Central Florida. This region sees more tornado activity per square mile than almost any other part of the state. Large sections sit in flood-prone zones near the chain of lakes that run through the area. Crime runs roughly 40% above the state average in certain sections, but the real robbery is in the fees. Newer developments in Poinciana carry HOA fees of $200 to $350 a month, plus a separate community development district fee of $100 to $200 a month. On top of that, combined, that is $300 to $550 a month in fees alone that do not show up on Zillow. Add Osceola County property taxes at roughly 1.1% and homeowners insurance averaging around $4,000 a year, and that $280,000 listing starts costing you like a $360,000 home. That is Poinciana. Number 4. Spring Hill. Spring Hill in Hernando County looks like the perfect affordable suburb. Median home price, around $280,000. Quiet neighborhoods, close to Tampa. What the listing does not tell you is that Spring Hill sits in the heart of what geologists call Sinkhole Alley. Hernando County is one of the top 3 sinkhole-prone counties in the entire state. Since the 1950s, over 27,000 sinkholes have been verified across this region. What does that mean for your wallet? Sinkhole damage is not always covered under a standard Florida homeowner's policy. If you want sinkhole coverage, you are paying for a separate rider that adds $500 to $2,000 a year to your premium. Sinkhole testing for a single property runs $5,000 to $10,000. And if one forms under your foundation, repairs cost $10,000 to over $50,000. On top of the sinkhole math, Hernando County homeowners insurance averages around $4,200 a year, and property taxes run about 1.01%. A $280,000 home here carries roughly $3,500 a year in combined fees and taxes before insurance even hits. Spring Hill sits on shallow limestone bedrock, some of it only 50 to 100 feet below the surface. That is the geology underneath your investment. That is Spring Hill. Number 3. Port Richey. Port Richey in Pasco County gives you what looks like coastal Florida at a discount. Median home prices around $250,000, and you are right on the Gulf. But Pasco County is considered the single most sinkhole-prone county in Florida. On top of that, Port Richey has one of the highest crime rates in the state. According to FBI crime data, the violent crime rate in Port Richey runs more than double the Florida state average. That combination of sinkhole risk, coastal flood zone exposure, and elevated crime means your insurance premium reflects all 3. Homeowners in Pasco County pay an average of $4,800 to $5,800 a year for coverage, and properties in the flood zone need a separate flood policy on top of that. Property taxes in Pasco run about 1.06%. Add it up, and a $250,000 house in Port Richey carries roughly $9,000 to $11,000 a year in insurance and taxes alone. That is $750 to over $900 a month before your mortgage payment. The listing says $250,000. The true annual cost of ownership tells a very different story. But that is not the worst of it. Number 2. Lehigh Acres. Lehigh Acres in Lee County is the town that looks like the affordable version of Cape Coral. Median home price, around $313,000. Newer construction in some sections. It looks like a smart buy. But Lehigh Acres has a problem that goes back to the 1950s. The entire community was platted as a massive speculative grid covering 96 square miles. Hundreds of thousands of lots were sold to out-of-state buyers who never built on them. Today, vast sections have no sidewalks, no streetlights, and limited commercial infrastructure. It is unincorporated, no city services, no city police, no city fire department. And because it sits in Lee County, you are in the Hurricane Ian damage zone. Lee County homeowners insurance averages over $5,400 a year. Flood insurance, which many Lehigh Acres properties require, adds another $1,500 to $4,000 on top of that. Property taxes in Lee County run 1.32%, which on a $313,000 home is over $4,000 a year. Add it all up, Insurance, flood, and taxes alone can run $12,000 to $14,000 a year. That is $1,000 a month in carrying costs before your mortgage payment even starts. On top of that, certain sections of eastern Lee County sit near legacy phosphate mining areas. The EPA has documented elevated radiation levels on land that was later developed for housing. A 2018 lawsuit revealed that some subdivisions built on former phosphate land had radiation levels 11 to 21 times above the acceptable risk limit. Not every part of Lehigh Acres has this issue, but the fact that it exists should be on every buyer's checklist. That is Lehigh Acres. Number 1. Cape Coral, the town that is robbing Florida homebuyers worse than any other place on this list. Cape Coral looks like a dream. Over 400 miles of navigable canals, Gulf access, median home price around $375,000. That sounds like a deal for waterfront living. But Cape Coral is the single best example in Florida of a town where the listing price is a fraction of the real cost. Start with insurance. The average homeowner's insurance premium in Lee County ranges from $5,400 to over $8,000 a year. But that is just homeowner's insurance. Most of Cape Coral sits in a FEMA Zone AE or VE flood zone. That means mandatory flood insurance, which adds another $1,200 to $7,000 a year. Add those together, and you are looking at $7,000 to $15,000 a year just in insurance. Then there is Hurricane Ian. Cape Coral took a direct hit in 2022, and the market has not recovered. According to Zillow, home values have dropped 4.7% over the past year. According to Redfin, homes are sitting on the market for 85 days on average. Here is the math. A $375,000 Cape Coral home at 6.5% costs roughly $2,370 a month in principal and interest. Add property tax at $412 a month. Add homeowner's insurance at $500 a month. Add flood insurance at $250. Your real monthly payment is not $2,370. It is over $3,500 for a $375,000 house. That is Cape Coral. Those are the 5 towns where cheap is not actually cheap. But not every Florida town works this way. If you are the kind of person who runs the numbers before making a move, subscribe. The next 5 towns are why you are still watching. Number 5 on the worth the money list, Bartow. Bartow is the county seat of Polk County, right in the center of the state. Median home price around $220,000. It is a county seat, which means real infrastructure. A courthouse, a hospital, government employment that anchors the local economy. It sits inland, so insurance costs drop dramatically compared to the coast. No mandatory flood insurance for most of the town. No sinkhole alley geology. And because it is a county seat with a historic downtown, there is a floor under property values that purely residential communities do not have. Bartow is functional, affordable, and honest about what it costs. Number 4. Palatka. Palatka sits in Putnam County on the St. Johns River, about an hour south of Jacksonville. Median home price around $190,000. But here is the number that matters most. Putnam County has the lowest average homeowner's insurance premium in the entire state of Florida, $3,808 a year. That is roughly half what buyers in Lee County or Broward County pay. Half. Palatka has a historic downtown, a regional medical center, and direct river access. Is the job market limited? Yes. But for remote workers or anyone on a fixed income, home price plus insurance plus property tax keeps your total monthly cost under $1,500. That is Palatka. Number 3. DeLand. DeLand in Volusia County is a town with something most affordable Florida towns do not have: an anchor. Stetson University has been here since 1883, and it keeps the downtown walkable, the restaurants alive, and property values stable because there is always demand. Median home price around $280,000. Insurance runs well below the coastal Volusia average because DeLand sits far enough inland to dodge the worst wind premiums. Crime is low, and the historic district has real character. Dollar for dollar, DeLand might be the most livable town on this list. If you have made it to number 2, you are clearly someone who does the math before making a big decision. That is exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe. I cover towns like this every single week. Number 2. Sebring. Sebring sits in the Florida Highlands, and that word matters. Highlands. This is one of the few places in Florida that is genuinely elevated. The town sits on a ridge roughly 150 feet above sea level. In a state where most coastal towns are barely 10 feet above the waterline, that elevation changes everything. Lower flood risk, lower insurance, and a lifestyle built around dozens of freshwater lakes. Median home price around $210,000. Cost of living runs 15 to 18% below the national average. Insurance is inland low and there is no sinkhole alley geology to worry about. Sebring also has the Sebring International Raceway, one of the oldest racing circuits in the country, which brings tourism dollars and keeps the town connected. For lake access, low costs, and high ground in Florida, Sebring is the real thing. Number 1. On the worth the money list, Ocala. Ocala in Marion County is the town where every number actually adds up. Median home price, around $270,000. That is 35 to 40% below Tampa or Orlando. But the price is just the start. Insurance. According to Great Florida Insurance, a wind-mitigated home in Ocala averages around $2,200 a year. That is roughly 1/3 of what Cape Coral homeowners pay. Flood insurance is not required for the vast majority of Ocala properties. There is no sinkhole alley geology. Hurricane risk is dramatically lower than any coastal market. And here is what separates Ocala from every other affordable inland town. It has I-75. Direct interstate access means you can commute to Gainesville in 40 minutes or reach Orlando in 90. That connection is why Ocala has a real job market, a real hospital system, and real commercial infrastructure that most affordable towns simply do not have. My honest assessment: Ocala is not the cheapest town on this list, but a $270,000 home here with $2,200 insurance and no flood premium costs you less per month than a $375,000 home in Cape Coral with $8,000 insurance and mandatory flood coverage. That is not close. That is Ocala. So here is the thread that ties both lists together. The towns robbing you share 3 things. Hidden costs the listing never shows, whether it is insurance, flood premiums, CDD fees, HOA, or sinkhole riders. Environmental hazards that inflate those costs long after you close. And a gap between what the town looks like on Zillow and what it actually costs to live there month after month. The towns worth the money share 3 things too. They sit inland, where insurance is manageable. They have an anchor that keeps the town stable. And the listing price is the real price. Whether you are relocating or just doing the research before a big move, I hope this list helps. Subscribe and tell me in the comments which town surprised you most. We will see you in the next one.
No one is buying homes in these 10 U.S. cities anymore. Here's the real reason: 2026. More than twice as many sellers as buyers. That is the situation right now in one of America's fastest growing cities, a place where, just 3 years ago, people were lining up and bidding $50,000 over asking. Today, the buyers are gone. And across the country, there are 9 more cities where the same thing is happening. Here's the truth. When no one is buying, the person who does buy holds all the cards. Today, 10 U.S. cities where buyers have all but disappeared, and the real reason behind each one. One is the slowest housing market in the entire country. One had 18% of its sales fall apart over a single bill that has nothing to do with the price of the home. And the number 1 city just posted the worst home value drop in America. If you have been waiting for the market to give you an opening, this is the one to watch to the end. Number 10. Denver, Colorado. Picture a quiet street in a good Denver suburb where a tidy 3-bedroom has had a for sale sign in the yard since the snow melted, and it is still there. Denver was one of the great migration magnets of the last decade, the city everyone wanted a piece of. Today, the magnet has lost its pull. Roughly 22 to 23% of the listings here are cutting their price. Inventory has climbed to levels Denver has not seen in years, and homes are simply sitting. Here is the real reason, and it is different from the Sun Belt. This is not a flood of new construction. It is existing homeowners who finally listed, meeting buyers who suddenly have options and feel no rush. When buyers stop rushing, sellers start negotiating. And what nobody tells you is that a slow stretch in a city this desirable does not last forever. For a buyer with steady financing and a little patience, Denver right now is the rare chance to get into a premium market while the seller is the nervous one in the room. That is unusual. But the next city makes Denver look busy. Number 9, Phoenix, Arizona. There's a certain kind of Phoenix condo, small, a little older, tucked into a complex that looked like a sure thing in 2021, that almost no one will touch today. Phoenix as a whole is steadier than the doom headlines suggest. Single-family sales have actually held up, but underneath that average is a real problem. The smaller condos, the ones under about 1,100 square feet, have lost close to 17% of their value since the summer of 2022, and in some zip codes, it now takes 1.5 years to clear the homes for sale. The real reason is oversupply meeting a new rival. Those little units are competing head-to-head with brand new apartment buildings, handing out 2 months free rent. Why buy the small condo when the shiny rental down the street is cheaper? But flip it around. For a cash buyer or a snowbird who wants a lock-and-leave winter place, a market where builders and sellers are both anxious is a buyer's paradise. Concessions, buy-downs, and price cuts all on the table. Phoenix is a story of pockets. In the next city, the whole market shifted. Number 8, San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio rarely makes the dramatic headlines, and that's exactly why what's happening here is so telling. Redfin is named it one of the markets most at risk of falling prices in 2026, and the median sale price has already slipped down roughly 2% in a year to around $270,000. Homes that used to move in a couple of weeks now sit for over 3 months. The real reason is a three-way squeeze. Builders threw up subdivision after subdivision in the outer ring during the boom. The remote work wave that filled them has reversed as companies call people back to the office, and Texas insurance and property tax bills keep climbing. Put it together, and the buyer pool simply thinned out. As one local agent put it, the homes are nice. There just aren't enough people walking through the door. The median keeps slipping. The days on market keep stretching. And nothing in the numbers says that turns around fast. But the next city is where the new homes themselves became the problem. Number 7, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Drive through the newer suburbs ringing Dallas and you'll see them. Whole streets of brand new houses, beautifully finished, with no one living in them. Dallas-Fort Worth posted the sharpest price decline of any major Texas metro heading into 2026, and the reason is sitting right there on those streets. Builders, betting the boom would never end, kept building. Texas as a whole logged a record of more than 565,000 listings last year. And new homes around Dallas now take roughly 140 days to sell, nearly 5 months. Statewide, sales fell 8%. And this is the one entry on the list I'd put a warning on, because it's harder to buy into than it looks. Yes, the builder incentives are generous right now, but a discount means very little if the next 3 identical houses on the same street undercut your price the year you try to sell. So the smart buyer here checks one thing before anything else: how many more homes that builder still has sitting unsold nearby. Get that number wrong, and the deal that looked great on paper cost you on the way out. The next city is where the slowdown becomes a full stop. Number 6, Tampa, Florida. Tampa spent the pandemic as one of the hottest markets in the country. Today, prices are slipping, and the for sale inventory keeps climbing. But the real reason buyers are backing away in Tampa isn't the sticker price on the house, It's two bills that arrive after you own it. The first is insurance, which has become brutal across the Florida Gulf Coast. The second is hitting condo owners especially hard. After the Surfside collapse, Florida now forces older buildings through mandatory structural inspections, and the repairs are landing on owners as special assessments that can run anywhere from $5,000 to over $100,000 per unit. A buyer does the math, monthly payment, plus insurance, plus a possible assessment, and quietly walks. What nobody tells you is that this fear has split Tampa in two. Newer, well-built homes and updated buildings with funded reserves are still perfectly fine. For a careful buyer who reads the inspection report and the reserve study before signing, Tampa is full of motivated sellers and almost no competition. Number 5. New Orleans, Louisiana. We're getting close to that city from the top of the video, the one with more than twice as many sellers as buyers. But first, New Orleans, where the problem isn't the price of the home at all. Here's a statistic that should not be possible. In one recent stretch, roughly 18% of New Orleans homes that were already under contract, deals that were supposed to close, fell apart. Not because the buyer changed their mind on the house, because they could not get insurance they could afford. That is the real reason no one is buying in New Orleans. Premiums that used to run $3,000 or $4,000 a year have jumped to $8,000 and beyond. And on some properties, the layered cost of home, flood, and wind coverage can pass $14,000 a year. Louisiana now has one of the highest rates of badly underwater mortgages in the country, and values have actually slipped. One finance worker who bought a small mid-city house for $270,000 simply watched his insurer pack up and leave the state. So who on earth is this an opportunity for? The cash buyer and the buyer who shops inland and on higher ground, away from the flood zones, where coverage is still findable. In a city this beloved, the people who solve the insurance puzzle are buying today with zero competition. The next two cities are about a kind of home almost no one can sell at all. Number 4, Miami and the South Florida coast. There's one specific home that has become almost impossible to sell in 2026, the older oceanfront condo. For decades, it was the Florida dream, a unit in the sky, salt air, the whole reason people move south. Today, buyers are running from them. And the real reason is a law. After the Surfside Tower collapse that killed 98 people, Florida passed Senate Bill 4D, requiring every condo building 3 stories or taller to undergo structural inspections and actually fund its reserves. When those inspections opened up decades of deferred maintenance, the bills came due. Special assessments from a few $1,000s to $150,000 per unit. And in one widely reported Miami building, a single $21 million assessment. A buyer sees a cheap condo, then sees the assessment attached to it, and walks. Florida condo prices have fallen as a result. But here's the reframe for the right person. A building that has already done its inspection, already funded its reserves, and already paid its assessment is now one of the safest and cheapest condos you will ever find because all the bad news is already priced in. The fearful buyers cleared out and left the bargains behind. The top 3 cities are the steepest drops in the entire country. Number 3, Austin, Texas. Remember that opening number? More than twice as many sellers as buyers? This is the city. Austin has become, by the measures that matter, the slowest housing market in America. At one point, it had 128% more sellers than buyers, the largest imbalance of any major metro in the country, and homes sat longer here than almost anywhere. The real reason is the purest version of the whole story. Austin was the golden child of the pandemic. Prices exploded, builders raced to keep up, And then the demand that justified all of it evaporated, leaving the supply behind. Median values have fallen around 6% from the peak, and they may have further to go. But understand what that means if you're the buyer. In Austin right now, you can ask for things that would have gotten you laughed out of the room in 2021. Seller-paid closing costs, a rate buy-down, a home warranty, and a price cut on top of all of it, sometimes all at once. This is a city where the seller is finally the one who has to make the case. Number 2, Cape Coral in Fort Myers, Florida. Picture a canal front house, a boat dock out back, palm trees, the exact image of the Florida good life. And it's been listed for half a year with the price cut 3 times. Cape Coral was one of the biggest winners of the boom. Values shot up more than 60% between 2020 and 2022. Then, it became one of the biggest losers. The median sale price has fallen around 9 to 10% in a single year, down to roughly $341,000, and one forecast has it dropping another 10%. The real reason is a 1-2 punch unique to this coast, a brutal run of hurricanes, including the flooding from Ian that made people reconsider living here at all, and insurance that climbed so high it priced the next buyer right out. So sellers who need to move are now accepting losses. For a buyer, especially one paying cash or buying on higher, drier ground, this is the most negotiable waterfront market in Florida. Sellers here are offering to prepay your first year of insurance just to get the deal done. Before we get to number 1, step back for a second, because the same 3 forces drove every city on this list. First, the pandemic overshoot, prices that ran far past what local paychecks could ever support. Second, the cost wall that arrives after you buy, soaring insurance, and in Florida, those condo assessments, which scares buyers off even when the price looks fair. And third, oversupply meeting higher mortgage rates until the leverage quietly flips from the seller to the buyer. Notice what's missing from that list: a true crash. This isn't 2008, it's a correction. And there is one place in America where all 3 of those forces stacked into the same market at the same moment, which is exactly why it posted the worst home value drop in the entire country. Number 1, the Northport, Sarasota, and Bradenton area of Florida. White sand beaches, golf, one of America's favorite retirement landing spots, and the worst year-over-year home value decline of any major metro in the entire country, down about 8.5% according to Realtor.com. Let that sink in. The place where prices are falling fastest in America is a beach paradise. This is where all 3 forces met at once: the overbuilding, the cost wall, and the oversupply. And the result is a flood of homes for sale and almost no one willing to pay yesterday's prices. Here's the reframe, and it's the whole reason you watch to the end. If you're a retiree with savings, a cash buyer, or anyone who's been priced out of the Florida coast for a decade, this is the first real opening in years. The sellers are motivated, the competition is gone, and the homes are the same beautiful homes that cost a fortune 3 years ago. When everyone else is afraid to buy, the patient buyer writes their own ticket. And that's exactly what's happening here right now. So here's the takeaway. No one is buying is only bad news if you're trying to sell at the top. If you're trying to buy, a market full of nervous sellers and empty open houses is the opening you've been waiting for. As long as you do your homework on insurance, reserves, and the inspection report before you sign. The buyers who solve those 3 things are the ones quietly getting the best deals these 10 cities have offered in a decade. We'll see you in the next one. Zillow just flagged these 10 Florida towns as the worst housing markets of 2026.
Zillow just released data that changes how you need to think about Florida real estate. 15 of the 20 biggest home price drops in the United States right now are happening inside one state, Florida. And behind that headline is a migration number that almost nobody is talking about. Net domestic migration into Florida has collapsed 93% in 3 years, from 310,000 new residents down to 22,500 last year, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. In the 10 towns on this list, that collapse is showing up in the Zillow numbers, in the days on market data, and in the for sale inventory counts. If you're a buyer, an investor, or a current owner in Florida, this is your list. Number 10, The Villages. For 5 consecutive years, the fastest growing metro in the United States. Golf carts, pickleball, non-stop entertainment. At the pandemic peak, there were just 118 homes for sale in the entire community. Zillow now shows the average home value in the Villages down 2.8% year over year. Redfin's median sale price data puts the drop closer to 8%. And according to Realtor.com, active listings have climbed from 118 homes at the pandemic high to 521 homes on the market today. Realtor.com's housing analyst Hannah Jones noted that each listing is now getting measurably less buyer attention than it did at the peak. For buyers, this is the first time in years this community has been genuinely negotiable. The question is whether sellers have adjusted their expectations to match today's reality. The Villages is just the first name on this list, and it connects to something bigger. Every market ahead of it is declining for the same set of reasons. Pandemic era overbuilding that left more homes than buyers to fill them. A migration reversal that cut Florida's net inflows by 93% since their 2022 peak, and insurance costs that are making the cost of owning a Florida home higher than the cost of leaving it. Zillow's statewide data shows the average Florida home value has fallen 4.3% over the past year. For buyers, that is the backdrop for every town ahead. Number 9. Bradenton, Manatee County's main city, sitting directly south of Tampa. Zillow shows the average home value in Bradenton at $389,334, down 0.4% year over year. That city-level number understates what Redfin's sales data is picking up. Median sale prices in Bradenton are down 5.6% year over year to $340,000, with homes taking 95 days on market before selling and selling for roughly 5% below list price. The intra-city split is sharp. Zillow shows Bradenton Beach, just a few miles west, down 9.3% year over year to an average of $762,960. Realtor.com's 2026 housing forecast projects the broader Northport-Sarasota-Bradenton metro will decline another 8.9% this year. For buyers, those 95-day listings are sitting exactly because sellers haven't repriced. That's your opening. Number 8 is where the short-term rental bet went wrong. Panama City Beach. Post-pandemic Airbnb investors flooded this market expecting perpetual Gulf Coast rental income. Developers followed. Then the rental tourists pulled back. Short-term rental restrictions tightened in parts of the Panhandle, and supply just kept building. Zillow shows the average home value in Panama City Beach at $505,725, down 1.7% year over year, with homes going to pending in around 49 days. For buyers who've wanted a Gulf Coast property without competing in a bidding war, this market is now yours to negotiate. Just run the short-term rental numbers carefully before you close. Number 7. A market that was never overheated and is still declining. Daytona Beach. This city never caught the full pandemic boom the way the Gulf Coast did. It was a working-class town with a famous racetrack and a loyal tourist base, which is exactly why the decline here is harder to explain away as a correction. Zillow shows Daytona Beach home values down 8.2% year over year to an average of $259,418, one of the sharper drops among Florida's mid-sized cities. Realtor.com's 2026 forecast projects an additional 3.6% decline for the Daytona Beach metro. Within the market, coastal condos are bearing the most pressure. Inland single-family homes are holding better but still softening. For buyers, a declining market that was never overheated is negotiating leverage. Use it. Number 6. The cultural capital of Florida that buyers abandoned, Sarasota. This was Florida's crown jewel, ranked best place to live in America, art scene, Siesta Key Beach, buyers writing personal letters and paying cash above, asking just to compete. Zillow shows the average home value in Sarasota at $462,158, down 1.1% at the city level. Realtor.com's 2026 forecast projects the broader Northport, Sarasota, Bratton, and Metro, declining another 8.9% this year, which would make it the second worst performing metro in the country. The downtown core is holding better than the outer zippy codes. If you're buying, that split matters. Buyers patient enough to wait for this market to finish correcting may be entering a genuinely discounted version of one of Florida's best long-term markets. Before we get to the 5 more severe markets on this list, let's step back for a moment. If all of this data feels heavy, it shouldn't, not if you're a buyer. Redfin's latest Florida market data shows the statewide median days on market has climbed to 70 days, and more than 20% of active listings across the state have already taken at least one price reduction. That combination, days on market up, price cuts widespread, sellers motivated, is the most buyer-favorable environment this state has seen in over 5 years. The buyers who win in a correction are the ones who show up, while the sellers are still realistic and the comps are still moving lower. That window exists right now. Drop your city in the comments. I want to know what you're seeing on the ground. The next 5 markets are where the data gets significantly worse. Before the top 5, a few markets I know many of you are wondering about. Miami. Zillow's latest data shows the city down 1.6% year over year, with an average home value of $580,996. For a market that once seemed immune to any correction, even a 1.6% decline represents a meaningful shift from where prices were 2 years ago. Orlando, down 3.2% year over year per Zillow, to an average of $374,302. The theme park economy has not fully absorbed the construction activity from 2021 and 2022. Tallahassee. Realtor.com's regional data projects modest declines for 2026, driven less by insurance and more by a thin private sector economic base and softening demand now. Numbers 5 through 1. Number 5, Naples, Southwest Florida's luxury hub, where the conventional wisdom has always been that money insulates you from corrections. Zillow's data shows the Naples-Marco Island metro down nearly 6% year over year. The cost of staying problem here is more acute than anywhere else on this list. Insurance costs on some coastal properties in Southwest Florida have reached levels that exceed the monthly mortgage payment. Within the metro, inland and east of 41 properties are holding better than beachfront condos. If you're evaluating Naples, that distinction is where the value gap lives right now. For buyers with the capital to enter a luxury market on the way down, the discounts available in Naples today didn't exist 2 years ago. Number 4, St. Petersburg. This city had the hottest mid-market run in all of Florida. The Arts District, the waterfront, the downtown restaurant scene. For 3 years running, Pinellas County was one of the most desirable places to live in the country. Then hurricanes Helene and Milton hit in 2024. The U.S. Census Bureau's vintage 2025 estimates show Pinellas County, home to St. Petersburg and Clearwater, lost approximately 12,000 residents between July 2024 and July 2025. That is the second highest county-level population loss in the United States, behind only Los Angeles County. Zillow's metro-level data shows Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater down 6% year over year to an average of $354,666. Active listings in Tampa Bay increased 14.8% year over year per Realtor.com's December 2025 data. Realtor.com projects another 3.6% decline for the metro in 2026. The split within the market. Downtown St. Pete walkable neighborhoods are holding better than flood-prone zip codes. Buyers should check flood zone status and get an elevation certificate before any offer. Number 3. Northport, a city of roughly 80,000 residents in Sarasota County that most people outside Southwest Florida can't place on a map. That anonymity is part of why the data here catches people off guard. Zillow shows the average home value in Northport at $318,081, down 9.3% year over year, with homes going to pending in around 64 days. That 9.3% is a direct Zillow city-level number, not a metro average, not a projection. It puts Northport among the hardest-hit individual cities in Zillow's entire Florida dataset. The driving force is the same one reshaping the broader metro. The area built aggressively during the pandemic boom and demand never caught up. New construction inventory is competing directly with resale, compressing prices on both sides of the market. Realtor.com's 2026 forecast projects the Northport-Sarasota-Bradenton metro declining another 8.9% this year. Layered on top of what Zillow already shows, cumulative losses from peak are heading deep into double-digit territory for anyone who bought in 2021 or 2022. For buyers, Northport offers some of the most accessible price points on the entire Southwest Florida corridor. Right now, new construction builders here are negotiating. Number 2, Fort Myers and the Cape Coral Metro. After Hurricane Ian, the story was resilience, a market rebuilding and coming back stronger. 3 years later, the data tells a harder story. Zillow shows Cape Coral home values down 4.7% to an average of $398,122. Redfin's market data puts the median sale price at $351,000 as of March 2026, down 4.8% compared to the prior year. Realtor.com's 2026 housing forecast projects the broader Cape Coral Fort Myers Metro declining an additional 10.2%, one of the largest projected declines for any metro in the country. For buyers, the canal front inventory that was untouchable in 2021 is negotiable today. But get insurance quotes before any offer. That's non-negotiable. Before number 1, a quick note on the data. Every price figure in this video comes from one of 3 sources: Zillow's data, Realtor.com's 2026 housing forecast, or Redfin's sales data, all publicly available and linked in the description. The migration figure comes from U.S. Census Bureau Vintage 2025 estimates. If you want to run these numbers for your own zip code, Zillow's home values page and Redfin's city-level housing market pages both update monthly. If this kind of breakdown is useful, subscribe. I cover these markets every week now. Number one, and this one genuinely surprised me when I pulled the data. Punta Gorda, not Miami, not Tampa, not even Cape Coral. Punta Gorda is a smaller waterfront community in Charlotte County. About 22,000 residents in the city itself, known for its boating culture, its waterfront dining district, and as the more affordable alternative to the Naples and Sarasota markets nearby. It doesn't get talked about the way Cape Coral or St. Pete does. That's part of why the data here caught my attention. According to Zillow, the Punta Gorda Metro fell 11.93% year over year between January 2025 and January 2026. That is the steepest decline of any metropolitan area in the entire United States. Zillow's data for a specific Punta Gorda zip code confirms a year-over-year decline of 11.7%, with an average value of $335,129. To put that in context, out of the 20 largest home price drops nationally, per Zillow, 15 are in Florida. Punta Gorda is at the top of that list. The causes: interest costs, investor liquidation, hurricane exposure, converged more severely in Charlotte County than anywhere else in the state. Sale-to-list ratios are sitting around 95 to 96%. Sellers are realistic. For buyers specifically, the waterfront access that Punta Gorda offers doesn't exist at these prices anywhere else in Southwest Florida right now. Buyers who move here in this window will understand exactly what they were buying into. Here is the one thing to take away from this entire list. Florida is not one market. Punta Gorda is declining from catastrophic convergence. The Villages is declining from demand cooling. Bradenton is declining from builders who oversupplied. Each situation is different, and each one creates a different kind of buyer opportunity if you understand the distinction. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update. These markets are moving fast and I cover them every week. And if you want to go deeper on any one of these towns, the video on your screen right now is a good place to start. I'll see you in the next one.